Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Xscoundrel here. I took a bit of a break from TFT on 1013. I know a lot of you that watch the channel probably heard my frustrations and understood them, but I actually decided that it would be healthy for me to just take a quick break from the game, refresh my interest for it, and wait for 1014 to come out. And they really went all out on 1014. There is a lot of significant changes. So what we're going to do in this video, as always when I do a new patch video, we are going to go through the patch notes, and then we are going to run through as many different compositions as I think work on this current update. And on those compositions, all we will talk about is the end goal plus the items. We will not talk about the mid game or the early game. I'll save those for my individual videos. So timestamps will be in the description below. Thank you to G2A for sponsoring the channel as well. There is a link in the description below which you can click if you'd like to. Otherwise, let's get on with the video. First of all, if you want to check out the patch notes, I've linked them in the description below as well. I'll also link all of the individual compositions with a link, as well as a sorted tier list on the a tier list in the description. The way that I present the comps in order on the video may not be the order that they are in the tier list. What I tend to do is I record the video and then afterwards I have a think about what comps I'd like to go where. And this tier list is purely speculational. Speculatory? What is that? I don't. It's purely speculation. So I don't know if it's going to be the way that it is. It's just based on what I think is strong based on the changes. But obviously, as we know from pretty much every update that I've tried to do this on, I'm usually wrong. So let's just get on with the changes and talk about them. Okay, first up, Nico boxes. Basically, if you're going to get a Nico from either a gold or a blue box, you're going to get a Nico plus 2 extra coins. So essentially, Nicos can hurt your economy a lot in the early game, plus you don't get an item or a champion, and Nico only comes in useful usually later on into the game. So the change is that if you're going to get a Nico, you're also going to get some coins as well, which I really like. This is a really big change, and this is one that you're going to have to really experience to feel it. Have you ever been in a game where you have just randomly got 3rd or 4th or even 5th by a very slim margin? Basically, that was often to do with at what point you lost the round. That is being changed. Now, it is whoever ends the round on the lowest negative damage total will get the... if everyone ends on the same round, it'll basically be whoever has the most negative life gets the lowest position. So essentially, if you have like 20 HP, but you get flattened by someone, like the first place player, and you lose 26, you'll only end up at -6. If you have 2 HP and you get beaten by like 10 HP, you're going to be at -8, and you will place below that person who got -6. This is a good change. This rewards people who try to preserve their HP as much as possible, and it's less RNG reliant based on who you end up facing. So I really like this. It's a good change. There's a new galaxy, Dwarf Planet, which is essentially the first and last row of every board is disabled. I'm not sure I like this. Again, this is one of those galaxies that I think restricts a lot of compositions. It could make things more fun, but it definitely means like brawlers and vanguards are going to have huge value here because ranged champions are going to be clumped much closer together, and melee champions won't have to travel as far. But that is what it is. And they've removed the little legends, praise be unto God, if you so believe in that, that they've removed little legends. Yes, die in everlasting TFT hell, little legends, you are a terrible galaxy. Okay, let's look at some of the trait buffs and changes. Star Guardians, essentially, Star Guardians have been shifted so much so that you get less mana per share, but every Star Guardian's actual mana has been buffed, so that they're going to have lower total mana costs. The most significant is Syndra going down to 40 mana. Syndra is going to become an insanely powerful unit on this update, and that's going to mean like Star Guardians and Sorcerer compositions that use Syndra with a blue buff. You're going to get some insane value out of her, so she's a really good unit to have. And yeah, in general, 6 Star Guardians are probably going to be relatively meta again. The other traits that have been changed are Celestial, in the sense that a buff at 2 and 4 is going up, and then a ridiculous buff at 6, where you get 150% healing. I'd love to see a Celestial comp this update. I'll see if it works. Cybernetics are getting nerfed pretty significantly. 50 HP at both values and 5 AD at both values, which is pretty big. And Sorcerers are also getting nerfed. So that's one of the changes that may slightly affect Star Guardians. But 4 Sorcerer and 6 Sorcerer are getting 5% spell power nerfs. They're still going to be fine. Obviously, no one else really does what they do. But there's a nerf to Sorcerers. Alright, champion balances. Let's start off with tier 1, Jarvan. Jarvan getting a buff, 50 HP, 5 AD, and his mana is getting buffed so that he casts more quickly. Plus, he's getting a buff on the actual attack speed that goes up. Jarvan is going to be insane, and actually I think it's going to be a really good protector in both protector compositions, and plus the Xayah buff, we may even see Shredder coming back into the meta, or the Caitlyn Jarvan composition, which you saw previously a couple of patches ago. This Jarvan buff is huge. I think Jarvan's going to be a great unit. Mordekaiser are getting buffed on both damage and health. Rakan is getting a buff, and Yasuo is also getting a buff. So Dark Stars, they're going to potentially be coming in a bit more on this update because a lot of the Dark Star units are getting buffed, and protectors as well. A lot of protector units are getting buffed. Let's have a look at some of the tier 3 champions. Ashe, health buff. She's getting attack speed buff. She's getting a damage buff, and now thankfully, the stun duration on her arrow is going up, so 2-star Ashe is going to stun for 3 seconds, which is pretty insane. Ezreal is getting a nerf, I think needed, because he was a very strong utility unit that we saw in a lot of compositions. Karma is getting a buff, pretty big buff actually at Karma 2 as well. I think we're going to see Karma in a lot of different compositions. She's actually also going to make up for the Jinx nerfs that we see later on, so we might see the Mystic Jinx composition start to slide back in, because the Karma kind of makes up for some of the Jinx nerfs. But also Darkstar. Neeko getting buffed on armor and health, so again, good Star Guardian frontline. Shaco getting buffed in terms of mana, so we might see him again, maybe see him as a Darkstar carry from time to time. Syndra, Unleashed Power Damage, is getting a buff, especially at 2 and 3 star, which is going to be insane. So like I said, Syndra also getting buffed with mana totals means that she's going to be a great unit. Vayne getting a big nerf, which is great because she needed it, and also means that you're unlikely with the Cybernetics nerfs to be able to play Vayne as a proper carry. If you're playing Cybernetics, it has to be Aurelia. And Vi is getting a slight nerf across the board in terms of damage, which is probably needed. She was very strong. Or, well, she was decent. Fizz getting a nerf across the board in terms of damage output, 50 at each rank. Irelia getting a buff in health, 100 health buff, an attack damage buff of 15, an armor buff of 15, a magic resist buff of 20. Her blade surge damage is getting 50% at level 1. Sorry, yeah, 50% at level 1. Aurelia is going to be insane in both maybe a Blade Master composition, but also in a Cybernetic composition. You can still run Aurelia. She's going to be very good. I mean, basically, what's happened here is they're trying to make up for some of the Cybernetic nerfs. So she's going to get the health back that she would have lost from Cybernetic, and she's going to get an extra 5 AD from what she would have lost from Cybernetic, but she's also getting armor and magic resist. So you have to play Aurelia as your carry in 6 Cybernetics now, because she basically makes up for some of the nerfs that Cybernetics have received. So Aurelia is going to be a good carry, but also potentially a great standalone Blade Master in a Blade Master composition. Jhin getting attack damage buff, he's getting an attack speed buff as well. His 4th shot damage is getting buffed significantly at level 1 and level 2. Jhin, Astro Snipers, Darkstar coming back. Jinx, attack speed is going down again, so just another attack speed nerf, but like I said, Karma might be able to make up for that. I don't think Jinx is going to suddenly drop out of the meta. Riven shields. Riven's getting another shield nerf by 25 at every rank, and I think, again, she is still going to be fine. I still think Riven 6 Sork is going to be a great composition, but do I think it's going to be S tier? Probably not, but A tier for sure. Victor's getting nerfed. Okay, I didn't really think that Victor was like insane. Aurelion Sol is getting nerfed across the board, although at 2-star his mana drain's going up, trying to make him a bit more utility. So you're getting a 2-star... sorry, his mana drain's going down at 2 stars. So basically, they're nerfing him across the board. Aurelion Sol is very strong. And Janna's attack speed bonus is going to go down. So she's not going to be a great addition to things like the Blaster Brawler comps that we saw previously. Or she will still be fine, but not as good as she was. Urgot's getting a complete rework. God, I'm going to have to timestamp these notes to talk about the individual parts. I will do. I'll timestamp the notes for the individual parts. He's getting a buff in terms of defense, but his range is getting nerfed. His mana is going up. And essentially, he will always target the unit that is furthest away from him. But if it hits if that chain hits a unit in front of that, it will pull the closest unit that the chain hits. Also, Guardian Angel will not kill you, so he will not kill a unit with Guardian Angel. So if you've got a Guardian Angel versus an Urgot, it's a good way to protect. He's also getting an increased mana reduction per cast to compensate. So basically, he's going to wind up more quickly, but he's going to take a little bit longer to get the first cast off. No, sorry, no, he's going to wind up more quickly, but he's essentially going to not be able to target the unit that he wants to target every single time. You can block for those units. But also, you have to note that it's going to take longer for him to reel in his target. So probably overall, you're going to see him ramp up at the same rate. Giant Slayer now does pre-mitigation damage that matches its damage type. Okay, so basically, you're not going to get true damage from Giant Slayer anymore. It's going to deal damage based on the type of damage that you're dealing. So you'll get mixed from someone like Jinx, for instance, which could be pretty good. But it's going to deal physical or magic damage rather than true damage. And Ionic Spark is getting nerfed. Good, because Ionic Spark was probably pretty good. Okay, 10 minutes on the patch notes. Let's go through all the comps. And remember, this is usually a long video, but I'll try and keep the comps relatively short. Okay, first up, I want to talk about Star Guardians. Oh, I just need to scroll up. Okay, right, here we go. There we go. First, I want to talk about Star Guardians. And I also want to use this as an example for how to read the builds that I'm doing. Okay, so Star Guardians, first of all, you want to notice the champions that I'm using. You're also going to notice the items that I've placed on them, as they are example items. You don't need them 100%. What I would say for this build, carousel priority should be tier, then rod, almost every time. And the way that you're going to read carousel priority is going to be by looking at this little box over here and looking at which of the components prop up the most. For this particular build, I would say that blue buff on Syndra is going to be the most important item that you can get. This is also a build at level 7 that you will roll to hit your 2 stars at the very least. And obviously Xerath can be replaced for any other sorcerer that you want or that you find, like for instance Victor. Victor can hold your Xerath items, for instance, but this is what your 6-star Guardian composition is going to look like towards the end game. Realistically, to hit Janna and Xerath, you're going to have to hit level 8. So at level 8 you can throw in pretty much anything that you want, but things like Protector would work well, another Mystic would work well, like a Lulu for instance. So really just depends on what you feel like is going to be necessary. If you're running Xerath, you might want to have a Dark Star. You know, 2 Dark Star can never go wrong. But this is what your level 7 comp will look like, but obviously Janna might be a Poppy and Xerath might end up being another sorcerer of any kind realistically. So yeah, this is a Star Guardian Sorcerer. I think it's going to be really strong on the next update. So let's run with that. Next up, we're going to look at Riven 6 Sorcerer. This build is still going to be incredibly strong on the next update, so don't get too stressed about this composition sort of dropping off in value, because it's still going to be very good. It's not going to be like needs to build it every game good, but it's still going to be a composition that if you get it, it's going to be a great composition to have. In terms of carousel priority, I think it should be Rod, followed by probably GA stuff if you can get it, otherwise tier. Let's talk about this particular composition then. Again, you're looking for Riven 2-star with the items Rabadons and GA at the very least. Quicksilver does help because it means that she's not going to get Zephyred, but obviously if you're running an Annie, which I would recommend, you can always try and play a game of get the Annie Zephyred over the Riven. In terms of the rest of the backline, Syndra with blue buff with 3-star Guardians is going to work really well. You can drop Janna for an Ahri, for instance, but then replace with Janna once you get her. And again, Syndra can be a secondary carry in this composition because of how strong she is going to be on this current update. Still going to be a great comp. Activates realistically at level 7 at the very earliest with your 6 sorcerers, but then you're going to want to get to level 8 to add in either the Janna and replace the Ahri. So like before level 8, you might have the Ahri over the, I don't know, like the Annie, for instance, but then level 8, you're going to want the Annie and the Janna just because it's going to allow you to be much more effective. Let's talk about Cybernetics now with Irelia as a carry. Now, this is a comp that could either be A+ tier if you hit the nuts, or it's going to be like A/B tier at best. What I would say is that despite the Cybernetics nerfs and despite the Vayne nerfs, you can very easily still play Cybernetic Irelia carry because Irelia got some pretty significant buffs, which makes her a great standalone unit. But in the Cybernetic build, it's also going to make her still very, very good. Mainly the defense buffs, which are going to really help her inside Cybernetics in general. She also got buffs to compensate for the drop off in damage and health that Cybernetics at 6 Cybernetics get. So she's still going to be an incredibly good unit. And obviously at 2-star and 3-star, she's going to be a solid carry. you just don't play Vayne anymore. Well, you do play Vayne, but you can use Vayne as an Irelia item holder. And obviously, you're still going to have a good mid game because Vayne exists. Like, despite the nerfs, 6 Cybernetics is still going to be a very strong comp. And obviously, then you're just going to replace that 6th Cybernetic for Echo once you find it. But this is what the comp is going to look like overall. Irelia with Infiltrator Talons is going to make this an A+ composition. If you don't get Infiltrator Talons and you have to put Irelia a little bit further forward, then it's going to be a bit meh. But it's going to be a really good comp if you can get the units for it. So don't worry too much about the Cybernetics nerfs. You just have to move your carry potential from Vayne over to Irelia, which is definitely going to make it a little bit harder to achieve, but I still think it's going to be a fine composition to play. And again, random items on random Cybernetics. You know how Cybernetics work by now, and that's the way you play it. The return of a familiar face, Astro Sniper. I do genuinely believe Astro Sniper is going to be good on this next update. These Gnar items, I don't know why I selected those. Let's go with something a little bit more Gnar-like. Actually, you know what? Ionic Spark's pretty good alongside Teemo, so we can run with that. I think with the Jhin buffs, with the Karma buffs, we're going to see Astro Sniper a bit more on this next update. I think Jhin sorely needed a buff. I think he was a very, very lackluster unit, and this might be enough to make him good on this update, and they might even unlock some of the Darkstar compositions again. But Jhin in Astro Sniper, I feel, is going to be making a comeback on this update. And again, itemization-wise, Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, Runans, really nice combo. Helps you deal with the front lines that I think realistically, with the fact that Vanguard still exist in the way they do, you're going to always need the Infinity Edge, Last Whisper combo. In terms of carousel priority, I would say it's Glove, followed by Bow, followed by Sword. And that's the way that I would look to play it. But you've probably played this composition a few times before. It's very strong. And yeah, feel free to test it out. Okay, next up, if I can just scroll up, is going to be a Darkstar version of Snipers. This is going to be an interesting one. I think Darkstar with the Jhin buffs are going to be pretty solid on this update. And I'm just tentatively putting this in A tier because I think it could be super good with the Celestial buffs, with the buffs to Jhin, with the buffs to Karma. I think realistically, you're going to use Shaco as an item carrier for the Xerath maybe. But overall, you're going to want to get Xerath too eventually. He's going to be the main carry from this comp. Carousel priority should probably be Bow, followed by Gloves. You want to be looking to itemize Jhin for your mid game and then itemizing Xerath for your late game. But I think this could be strong. For Darkstar, because I think going any further than 4 Darkstar is probably not going to be fantastic. But this is going to give you a good mix of utility, defense, and should be enough to be a pretty strong composition on this update. So feel free. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. I think it's going to be an interesting one to test out in the coming next few weeks. Jarvan buffs, Ashe buffs, Xayah buffs, Rakan buffs. I think Shredder could be on the way back. This is something that definitely... actually, do you know what, guys? I'm going to drop the Riven here. I don't know why I've got Riven in there. I think, actually, with the changes to Irelia, she's become a much better individual unit. We can give her GA. Okay, so there we go. Made some changes on the fly. This is Shredder, and obviously you may have played Shredder a lot in the past, but I think with the changes to Jarvan and the changes to Xayah, I think we could definitely see a really strong Shredder comp. The only problem that Shredder is going to have, and this is something that you'll always have to be aware of, is that you don't really hyper roll anymore. You have to slow roll at 5, and if you don't hit your Xayahs quick enough, you could definitely be in hot water. But what I would say is I think that with the buffs to all of some of the key units to Shredder, I think it's going to be a good comp on this update. You don't need to play Quicksilver, you could play Runans instead. There are lots of different variations of Xayah itemization. I'm just showing you what I think the best is. But definitely prioritize Gloves on the carousel, and then look for things like Bow, and then look for things like BF Sword. I think Shredder will be good on this update. It's just about how you go about rolling at level 5 for the units that you need. It definitely feels like it's going to have to be a slow roll because hyper roll doesn't really exist anymore. But if you can hit it, I think it's going to be good. Definitely on Reroll Galaxy, this will be a great comp. Okay, guys, this is a comp that I saw on Reddit. It's on the front page of the competitive TFT Reddit, so go and check out the poster. I did not make this composition up. This is like Protector Celestial Darkstar Sniper. And again, running with the same Jin items that you've seen in some of the other compositions. I do genuinely think this could work with some of the buffs that all of these individual units are getting. Like, we're getting Jarvan buffs, we're getting Rakan buffs, we're getting Neeko buffs, we're getting Ashe buffs, we're getting Karma buffs, and we're getting Jin buffs, as well as Shaco buffs. So like all of these units are getting buffed. I'm going to test this build out because I'm not entirely sure how it plays. I've never played it before, but I'd love to see if it can function at a higher level. I'm tentatively placing this at B+ tier because I'm not totally sold or / have ever played it before, but feel free to give it a try and let me know how it goes. I think it could be good, and I'm not going to take the credit for the build. It's on the front page of the competitive TFT Reddit. I will also link the guide alongside the LOL chess so that you guys can see it. Gonna be an interesting one. Again, for Darkstar, maybe making some more appearances because of the Jin buffs. Alright, Mech Sorcerer. Interestingly, I actually don't know why this build would be in any lower than A tier, but I think the problem with Mech is that you kind of have to high roll Mech a little bit at the moment. But maybe Mech Sorcerer is going to be a bit more powerful in this next update, especially if you're running the Syndra variation, where you have Mech as the front line for your Syndra. Your Syndra with the blue buff, you have three Star Guardians. Like, this Mech 6 Sorcerer build could be pretty strong. It's a level 8 build. It revolves around having the Mech as the front line. It buys enough time for your Syndra to go off. I don't know if it'll be any better than a 6 Star Guardian version of the Syndra comp, but it is another variation that you can consider. And again, blue buff for Syndra is a must. Then you're probably looking for rods to go for Ionic Spark or Rabadon's Deathcap. You need to prioritize at least a Quicksilver on your Mech. But, yeah, this is also another interesting one. I would probably run my items on the Annie over the Rumble in this scenario because... No, actually, no, the Rumble's fine. Rumble really benefits from Sorcerer bonus as well. I'm going to go back on myself when I'm talking about it. But yeah, Mech 6 Sorcerer with Syndra as a primary carry. Feel free to test this one as well. So, a comp that is going to get hit because of the Vi nerfs, the Ezreal nerfs, the Aurelion Sol nerfs, and the Jinx nerfs is going to be Blaster Brawler with the Rebel package. This comp will still be fine, but I think it's going to be hit significantly harder than some of the other builds on this update. And I think with the Jinx nerfs, so that she's been nerfed 2 patches in a row now, and nerfs to a lot of the crucial units in this composition, I think Blaster Brawler is probably going to be a B tier composition. It will be good if you hit the Jinx 2-star, it can probably do really well in the mid game, but it will fall off very heavily. I'm going to show you a variation of Blaster Brawler after this version, which I'm not sure how to rank just yet, so I'm going to put it alongside the B tier. But I think it's a version that used to exist that probably will be coming back as a relatively strong option because of the buffs to Karma. So I'm going to share this one first, and then I'm going to briefly talk about the Mystic variation of Blaster Brawler. So here is a version of Blaster Brawler that I think could be pretty good. This is the level 9 version. Level 8 you just don't have the Aurelion Sol, but the level 9 version you have the Aurelion Sol in to retain the Rebel bonus. This version of Blaster Brawler has the Karma attached to the Jinx, giving her increased attack speed and a shield, and then you have the Soraka for the healing in the composition as well. You might want to have the Blitzcrank a little bit closer to the Jinx, but overall, this is a version of Blaster Brawler that I think could be coming back into the meta because of the Karma buffs, and it's going to compensate for some of the Jinx nerfs as well. So keep an eye on this one. This could be a good version if you want to still play Jinx, and you want to get an extra bonus in there. This is a comp that used to be pretty solid, and hasn't really been played as much of late, but I think could be coming back with the Karma buffs. So keep an eye on this one. It's probably going to be higher than B tier, but I'm not going to really go too ham on it because I'm not sure how bad the Jinx nerfs are going to be. But I think this could be a version of Blaster Brawler that we see more often on this next update. Honestly, with 6 Rebels, I'm probably being a bit harsh here. I think 6 Rebels are probably going to be fine still, but I'm putting them in B tier just to be safe, because the Aurelion Sol nerfs and the Jinx nerfs might mean enough to put Rebels in the dirt a little bit on this next coming update. But I think the nerfs, especially to Jinx, were relatively minor. Plus Yasuo got some slight buffs. Irrespective, we're going to put Rebels in B tier, not quite sure where they're going to sit, but again, you play them the same way last time. You look to get Jinx, you can transition out of Blaster Brawler into Rebels, which usually ends up being a slightly stronger late game composition than Blaster Brawler in general. In fact, I'm going to put them at B+ tier. It's not going to be in the video in the correct order, but I'm going to put them slightly above Blaster Brawler because they're generally a better late game option than Blaster Brawler overall. Okay, another one that has been floating around on the previous update, but I'm not sure what to make of it with the changes to Urgot. It's basically Battlecast. Yeah, not quite sure what to make of Battlecast. Victor got nerfed, Urgot got massively changed, and I think overall Battlecast is probably going to be where it was before. Like a B tier composition. It can do well if you snowball it. But I don't think it's going to be a comp that runs away with the game. There hasn't been any significant Battlecast changes apart from the Urgot changes, and I don't know if this is going to make Urgot significantly worse or significantly better. Most of the feedback from the PBE that I've had is it's made Urgot slightly worse. So, take this as you will. Battlecast are very item dependent. You're going to need red buff. That's why I like to go for a Chain Vest on the carousel, because you can transition out of Chain Vest into lots of other different builds. But Battlecast, if you want to play it, here's what the composition should look like. Feel free to try it out. Another build that I'm not sure how it's going to function, so I'm going to put it down in question mark tier, no, maybe B tier, is Protectors. Karma got a buff, Rakan got a buff, Jarvan got a buff, so the Jarvan's going to come into this Protector comp in a slightly better scenario. But the Urgot changes might limit the late game potential of this build. Lots of buffs on units that do function, like the Ashe, the Karma, the Rakan, and the Jarvan. But overall, I'm not entirely sure how this build's going to shape out. So I'm not going to make any wild swings. I'm just going to say, here's the build. Try it out, see if it works. If it does, awesome. If it doesn't, then you know. This is what the build should look like, though, towards the late game. You can separate out the Lulu and the Ashe if you want. I just put them there because they're sitting behind the Urgot. But it is a pretty simple build to make work. You're probably not going to find Lulu and Urgot at level 7, so you can usually add something else in. Either another sniper, like a Jhin, for instance. A Jhin is pretty popular as well. In fact, what I would say is that, I'm even going to make that change right now, is that actually just adding a Jhin in is going to give you slightly more power output, and if you can get any kind of items on him, even just like a Runans plus an Infinity Edge or whatever, if you can get any kind of items on him, this could be a pretty strong version of the composition with 3 Darkstar. Then obviously you can add another Darkstar at the late game. In fact, this might just look like the Protector. This actually just looks exactly like the Protector composition that we saw earlier. Slightly different version of it though, so I'm going to put it in anyway. I'm just going to put it in anyway. Enjoy. The last build that I'm going to touch on is Blade Masters, which you've probably seen a lot of over the last few days, but I'm going to change this build. I actually don't even know if I would run the Zed variation of this build anymore. What I would say is I think that you can run the Zed variation, but I wouldn't actually put my items on Zed, or maybe even not even on Master Yi. I think that Irelia is a great individual unit now, so some of the items that I would usually put on Zed, I might move them over to Irelia, for instance. Especially if you can get the Infiltrator spat on her and run her alongside the Fizz. Like, this is a 6 Blade Master Irelia version that could work really well. I'm just not sure how to build it or even how to get there, so I'm going to put this in the question mark tier. But it is something that could be really good. 6 BM Irelia. Irelia could be now a good individual carry, and I'd love to see her work in that capacity. So feel free to test her out and let me know how it goes. This is something that I'm just throwing out there as a pure speculation, just because Irelia got some pretty significant buffs as a standalone, and I think could be a good option for an individual carry in a lot of different builds now. Alright guys, those are all the builds that I'm going to cover. I probably missed some builds, but this is one of those things that I'm just trying to throw as many resources out there as physically possible. I'll always link extra resources in the description below. The competitive TFT Reddit is a great way to see emerging builds. Another good resource is this a document that gets updated, a Google document that gets updated every patch, but it usually takes a week for that document to get fully updated, so I'm not sure you're going to be able to see much on it just yet. But again, a lot of the new patches are about experimentation, getting on your Smurf, trying out builds and seeing what works. Keep an eye on social media channels, keep an eye on YouTube, and you'll see other content creators starting to build new and different builds. But yeah, I'm gonna go and test out some of the builds in this video, and I'll see how they go, and hopefully you guys can too. See you soon.